Welcome to 54015, a place to talk about tech news in the federal government. On this week's broadcast, Trey White and Mark Ostrander.
Come to decide that the things that I tried were in my life just to get high on.
All right. 7 a.m. Wednesday. You know what that means.
Meerkat time.
Meerkat. Man, we really should do Meerkat Monday. I think that just flows. But we don't. We do Meerkat Wednesday. For those of you that are joining for the first time, what's up? We're 540.co. You can follow us on Twitter at 540co. We also have Facebook channels. We have
YouTube channels.
All
the channels.
If there is a channel provider out there, we have that channel somewhere. But anyway, we're 540. I'm Trey, at Trey White.
I'm Mark, at Mark_Ostrander.
So good thing now we have the lower thirds on our videos, so people can actually see what that is. So anyway, what we do on Wednesday mornings is typically for about 15 minutes. We get together, we talk a little bit about some tech stuff that's interesting to us. We'll talk a little bit about the federal government, tech in the federal government.
Some APIs.
Well, yeah, I mean, we love APIs. I don't have an Apogee sticker that I love APIs, but I should. So, I mean, we'll talk a lot about APIs, and, that'll be some of what we talk about today, right? The Meerkats that come after the DC API Meetup are always fun. So I think today one thing we can cover is some of the things that we saw at the Meetup last night. So we'll do that. And then also at the end, however much time we have left, I'm going to talk a little bit about Agile Development. I think we talk about that one to death, but we'll talk about it and kind of go from there. So I think those are the only two things we'll talk about today.
Yeah, so to start off, if you haven't, Meetup is a good thing.
Yes.
If you're in the DC area on the first Tuesday of every month, I would suggest checking out the DC Web API Meetup. That's what we go to, and that's what we did last night. And we'll start off with a few of the interesting highlights. One being Lindsay Young from 18F. She is doing something with the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission. They have decided to, try to develop their first RESTful API. It's called OpenFEC. You can check it out on their GitHub right now, 18F or github.com/18f/OpenFEC. They definitely encourage some contributors, any kind of issue logging trackers. They definitely encourage that. So what it is basically they're aiming to make campaign finance data more accessible,
right?
Make it a little bit easier for journalists and transparency seekers to access that kind of difficult form data that you see a lot with the campaign finances.
Right.
So it's been interesting. It's in a alpha or beta stage right now, so it's not quite out, but right. they definitely want you to check the beta API out on GitHub.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the interesting things last night. This isn't the first time someone's come to that meetup and done an unveiling.
Right.
I remember. Who was it? I think it actually was one of our buddies, Bob Glass, and at Apogee, and they came and they were unveiling some new platform too. But just like this, I mean, I think today is actually the day that they're going to release this, announce it. So we kind of got a sneak peek last night,
right.
And it was all good stuff, right?
It was.
Yep.
Their APIs are driven by Swagger docs, so it's interactive, fun to play with. They kind of want to make it easy to use. And get the data in your hands as quick as possible.
Right. Yeah. Lindsay had an interesting story where this was a kind of a research tasker that she did,
right.
several years back, where she just wanted to look all this up, and it was not easy for her. She had to go find data in different places. She had to collapse it all into a spreadsheet and do her own analysis on it. You guys that follow us know how much I love Excel as a solution. And then, she got some street cred for it. She ended up getting an LA Times for it, and here she is a couple years later building the APIs, which is so cool. I think that's what you see across the board with APIs, right? if someone finds the data useful, someone else finds it useful. So you just go ahead and create the API.
She just kind of followed a passion of hers, and that led to a good, start to hopefully a good API.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that she ended up doing was translating some terse federal forms into APIs too, which I totally feel her pain. We do that in one of our projects today with the DoD. So. Anyway, there was some overlap. I thought that was a good prezo. I also thought the Justin...
Right, that kind of leads into the next presentation that they did, which was don't make your APIs suck, basically. He had a really good short presentation of just things you can do to help better the transparency between your API and developers, basically. One of the three topics being don't make them confusing.
Yes.
Don't have poor documentation, and the downtime or slow time of just getting the data out.
Right.
I thought those were three interesting points, and three kind of everyone says the KISS model, keep it simple, stupid.
He harped on that, right?
Yeah, and you shouldn't really overcomplicate your API.
Now, there's supposed to be simple interfaces, right? And that's one of the things you always want to strive to make sure it's generic, it's easy to use. A term that's gained a lot more traction in the last 4 or 5 years is this thing called developer experience. Who used to care about developer experience? Nobody, really. I mean, you thought about the user. You thought about how I'm going to present information to the user and present on the screen and make sure people can get to what they need to get to. Nowadays, it's, well, in order to get to the user, you have to go through developers, and I'm going to create these channels that allow developers to build content on top of my data, so I need to make sure my developer experience is good. And so that all three of those things are relevant. And one of the things I think, too, that Justin mentioned that happens a lot is when we're building APIs, we build in these cool little features here or there. We might have some routes that...
Right.
We started to build and ended up finishing the build, but then maybe someone didn't want to sneak it into the final product, or for whatever reason we didn't document what we had done, and developers would have all these methods or things available to them, and then they just wouldn't know they existed. They'd call up the help desk and be like, how do I do this? Oh, you go to this API. Why isn't it in the documentation?
Exactly.
So I thought that was all good stuff.
Document is key.
Document is key, right? And so anyway, but I think those were two of the prezos that went down at the...
There was more. Just we wanted to highlight those two. We thought those were at least relevant to our Meerkat sessions and what we do in the tech world, tech API world. So again, we encourage you to check out the DC Web API Meetup the first Tuesday of every month.
Right. Unless you see a DoD API meetup, which those API meetups are awesome too.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Okay, we do those. We don't quite do them as frequently as the DC API when they're a little more targeted, but all the same good stuff. So yeah, absolutely, go check it out. So to switch gears a little bit, I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about Agile Development. What's up, Itchy Boo? He's a star. He makes it on every Meerkat. Hitch. What do you think about Agile Development?
No comment.
No comment. All right. Well, I guess I've got to talk about it then. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Agile. Now, as it would happen, a lot of times when I'm on some sort of a mission with one of my customers or on one of my projects, I'll want to talk about it here on the Meerkat. That happens to be the case with Agile, but it's also relevant. If you've been watching the last couple of Meerkat sessions. Our 54015s, we've been talking about this 18F Agile BPA, Agile Delivery Services BPA that we've been working on. And so it's something that you see a lot of people talking about. Agile is by no means new.
Right.
Agile's been around for a while. And I actually think this is where there are some problems with the way, when I say Agile, does that mean the way that you say Agile? Does that mean the way that person X says Agile? It's a term that gets used a lot. And in my experience, there are a lot of people that, for instance, take the Merriam-Webster definition of Agile to be what Agile means. I should probably have one of those memorized, but I don't. The ability to kind of be agile, move around, that sort of thing. be flexible. A lot of people will say flexible when they think of Agile. Okay, sure, yeah, I think so. But Agile really is a software development lifecycle, all right, with some rules. So we can talk about those very briefly. And if you think about it in the terms of the software development life cycle or process world, you have a Coke and you have a Pepsi. Agile is Coke and Waterfall is Pepsi, right? I mean, these are the two that everybody drinks. I mean, I'm sure there's some RC Colas out there, Sam's Choice, but I mean, those are the two big ones. And so when you're looking at a project and how to proceed, typically you're going to pick between Agile and Waterfall. I actually tend to think Waterfall gets a bad rap. I think Waterfall can work, and there are certainly situations where Waterfall makes sense. However, for most web, that's us. Most mobile, that's us, right? Most API, well, that's certainly us. Projects, Agile is always going to be, I say always, 99% of the time going to be the process that makes the most sense. So I think for one, we have to level set what that term means as we move forward. And so these guys got together several, 10 years back or whatever, and came up with a manifesto. It was probably longer than that, and I think it was in the 90s. I might be wrong on that, but they came up with these 4 basic rules that if you're going to be Agile, this is kind of what you follow, and they are, and take this little test, right? If you're working on a project, think about it. Which one of these 2 things am I? Do I focus more on individuals and interactions, or do I focus more on processes and tools? Well, if you're being Agile, you focus more on the individuals and interactions. Do I focus more on working software, or do I focus more on making sure I have comprehensive documentation? Okay, that's another kind of Agile versus Waterfall mentality. Which one are you? Agile is working software. You have customer collaboration versus contract negotiation. In the federal government, this one's comes up all the time because everything is contract based. So I mean, I'm hypersensitive to that. And I do agree, just as a quick aside, that this one's a difficult one in the government because the government right now just can't hire enough people. They need contractors. They need experts to come in and build some of these things. So how do you measure and how do you grade and evaluate the performance of these people that you've paid to do a task? Well, you have to set a contract, and you have to say, I expect you to do this, this, and this on the contract. Well, sometimes that means that in writing, if you don't want to get sued or a bad rating, you got to do it. The contract says, and now you're getting these nitpicky arguments of the contract. Anyway, that's sometimes a challenge with Agile. Usually you'd like to have less of that and more of just, all right, customer, what is it that you want to do today? Let's move forward. And then obviously the last big tenet of Agile is responding to changes that will occur over following a specific plan. So those are kind of the 4 things, left, right, which one am I? And I think we'll find that nobody probably gets a perfect grade on all those, but I mean, that's something we can strive for Agile. So Scrum, whenever I talk about Agile, I'm talking about Scrum Agile, typically. And so I try to preface that. And effectively what Scrum is, and there's no way we're going to be able to in the next 2-3 minutes talk about the Scrum process, but I mean, it's just a methodology to help get you using those 4 key tenets of Agile to get working software out there, prioritizing it over comprehensive documentation, to get in these iterative sprints, where for the next 2 weeks, we lock down our development team and say, let's plan this sprint out. Let's talk about what we want to accomplish. Let's achieve our goal. Show me what you did 2 weeks later. I don't like this. I like this. Add more, of those issues into your backlog, and then do the whole cycle over and over again. In my mind, and this is why I think it's so relevant to web development, is because feature creep is inevitable. Changing direction is inevitable. I always tend to ask the question is, raise your hand if you've ever worked on a project where the requirements never change, and nobody ever raises their hand. Is because that just is inevitable. And so would you rather, as those requirements change, iterate on the working software, iterate on your code, or iterate on documentation? It's a dangerous cycle when you iterate on the documentation, because what you could end up doing is iterating so much on the documentation that you never get to write the code. The waterfall goes from analysis to design to develop, to
Right.
test, to maintain.
Can't ever
And so, if you keep, oh, well, we got to go back to the top, and then you never make it to the develop line, it struggles.
Yeah.
So obviously, I would love to sprinkle in more buzzwords about Agile. I'd like to talk about how you can do things like measure velocity. I would like to talk about what user stories are and how you can manage those. For anybody that's watched Silicon Valley, you've obviously seen Agile in use. So anyway, something to think about,
Yeah.
and maybe kind of like what we did for test-driven development. Maybe we can do a whole nother longer session on what Agile really means, what Scrum means.
Or reach out to us.
Or reach
we
out
can
to
always have a conversation.
Absolutely.
Twitter, Facebook.
Right. And I think for the most part, people know what Agile is, or we all have our own definitions of it. But I do think that some of the problems, as we try to communicate about what it is, how it's helpful, is that we all have different definitions
Right.
of what Agile is. So I think in terms of a 5:40-15, that's probably all we can cover today.
Yeah.
That was a quick 15 minutes. As usual, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Always remember, so we're here on Periscope, we're here on Meerkat. You can ask questions, and we'll try to answer them during while we're on here.
That YouTube comments.
YouTube comments. We really want to interact with you guys. So in any way that you can, tweet at us, comment, hit us up on Facebook, email us, call us on the phone, send us a mail through the a letter through the mail, and we'll respond. So anyway, so
That's it.
that's it for today. Thanks for joining. Again, I'm Trey White,
I'm Mark Ostrander.
and your Twitter handle is
At Mark_Ostrander.
@__, man. Love it. All right. Peace out, guys. Thanks
you
for
guys.
joining.
I want in.